Okay, really bad news. Country's over, etc., etc. I kind of mean it this time. Trump has signed a new national security presidential memorandum. This is going to be mostly me just relaying information from the Ken Klippenstein article, which, I don't think I can really editorialize it more and better than he has. It's quite bad. So a national security directive is not an executive order. It's basically like a sweeping set of instructions for all federal law enforcement agencies. Anything Homeland Security, FBI. It's an incredibly like wide scope. This is like so it's an executive order. No, it's different. For one, executive orders can't be classified. These can. In fact, I believe if we take a look at... No, where's the... Here we go. This is the 7th of Trump's in this administration. The 6th one is classified. Numbers 1 through 5 are public. Number 7 was just released and is public. Number 6 is classified. So you can make with that of you will. Stephen Miller, who is, of course, the administration's Homeland Security advisor, says, "This is the first time in American history there is an all-of-government effort to dismantle left-wing terrorism." And it's really, 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 really bad. Basically, the gist of it is that, the Trump administration isn't only targeting organizations or groups, but even individuals and entities who the NSPM 7 say can be identified by any of the following indicia or indicators of violence: anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, support for overthrow of the United States government, extremism on migration, extremism on race, extremism on gender, hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on religion, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on morality. Obviously, these designations are so broad that they encompass, to some extent or another, everybody who is not like a hardline 100% perfect MAGA loyalist. This gives them broad permission to target any individuals who meet these categorizations and engage in a wide variety of extrajudicial behaviors, we'll say, from illegally, well, not illegally in this case, surveilling, wiretapping, looking at their private records, phone calls, internet search history, and so on. They can, it means that additional scrutiny can be placed on them, so they can start like hovering over you, looking for evidence of any crime. Hope you've never pirated anything. Jaywalked. Palantir stocks going up. Oh yeah, 100%. And now it's worth noting, by the way, that none of these things are laws. The executive branch cannot create laws. Only Congress can create laws. So at the end of the day, no matter what, if any charges are brought against you, that has to be done through the traditional judicial process. The problem, of course, is that since this is a broader national security presidential memorandum, we're talking about an invocation of powers that often supersedes the judicial system. For example, permission being given for U.S. citizens to be detained indefinitely without charge. So, aren't terrorism charges pretty broad? No, as a matter of fact, it's not even a real thing. It depends like state by state or federally, but terrorism itself, like being a part of a terrorist group or supporting terrorist groups, these in themselves, depending on the specifics, aren't necessarily laws. So it's really just a matter of how much the federal branch wants to with you directly without invoking the judicial system. But given the fact that they have historically held people in detention indefinitely without charge, your results may vary. It's all pretty subjective. They could just start blackbagging leftist public figures. Yeah, essentially. I mean, if they really wanted to, they could have done that before. Obviously, there have already been a bunch of like permissions given to federal police to engage in these investigations. And even if they weren't given legal permission, they could always illegally do it, like they have been, for decades. It's not great though. The United States requires a national strategy to investigate and disrupt networks, entities, and organizations that foment political violence so that law enforcement can intervene in criminal conspiracies before they result in violent political acts, the directive states. A pre-crime endeavor, preventing attacks before they happen, is core to the post-9/11 conception of counterterrorism itself. No longer satisfied to investigate acts of terrorism after the fact to bring terrorists to justice, the Bush administration adopted preemption. Overseas, that led to aerial assassination by drones and special operation kill missions. Domestically, it led to a counterterrorism campaign whose hallmark was excessive and illegal government surveillance and the use of undercover agents and confidential human sources to trap and entrap would-be terrorists. So, and I'm saying this very sincerely, you guys, very, very sincerely, because we all are, at least for the Americans in chat, patriots who love our country and want it to be better. If you didn't want your country to be better, I don't know why the fuck you watch my content. But now is ever more the time to call people feds. If somebody pops into your Discord channel and they're like, hey, you know, anyone else super duper interested in bomb making? Buddy, you got to be calling people feds. More so than ever before. Now is the time, because there's a decent chance they are. More so than before. Do not fall for that shit, okay? Do not allow yourself to get entrapped by some fat pig 80 IQ Homeland Security dipshit, you know, operating out of Virginia, looking to fill a quota. Can we say in Minecraft or no? I don't think they're going to be fooled by the in Minecraft thing. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, I'm pretty sure they put out a missive explicitly informing federal agents about the in Minecraft thing. I don't know if they've caught on to in Roblox. Now, with Donald Trump's directive retooling the counter-terror apparatus to go after Americans at home, that means monitoring political activity or speech as an investigative method to discover radicalism. Contrary to other national security documents all during the post-Watergate era, NSPM 7 doesn't even mention the First Amendment or the fundamental right of Americans to organize and protest. Yeah, that shit's done. The focus on speech is evident throughout the NSPM 7. The directive says that political violence is the result of, quote, organized campaigns that often begin with the left, dehumanizing targets in anonymous chat forums, in-person meetings, social media, and even educational institutions. To give a sense of how broad this formulation is, Trump's earlier designation of Antifa as a domestic terrorist group was accompanied by a White House fact sheet singling out people who celebrated Luigi Mangione, the alleged killer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson last December. As I wrote at the time, this describes a lot of Americans. Trump's new national security memorandum also alludes to Mangione, but adds to it even larger categories of potential targets. NSPM 7 is fundamentally a law enforcement directive, and it dispenses with the complications of using the active duty military or National Guard in pursuit of political violence. It directs the Department of Justice to focus the FBI's approximately 200 joint terrorism task forces to the new mission. The FBI network of task forces comprises over 4,000 members, including FBI personnel and task force officers from more than 500 state and local agencies and 50 federal agencies, including special agents, police officers, intel analysts, and surveillance technicians. First established in New York City in 1980 to systematize FBI and NYPD cooperation, today there are task forces around the country, including at least one in each of the FBI's 55 field offices. For the Trump White House, the beauty of using an already existing network is that it bypasses congressional oversight and scrutiny and even obscures federal activity to governors and legislators at the state level. States, cities, and local police have already signed memoranda of agreements with the feds to fight terrorism, and officers are already assigned as task force officers. NSPM 7 says the JTTF shall investigate potential federal crimes relating to, quote, acts of recruiting or radicalizing persons for the purpose of political violence, terrorism, or conspiracy against rights, and the violent deprivation of any citizen's rights. It authorizes the JTTFs to investigate individuals, organizations, and funders, quote, responsible for, sponsor, or otherwise aid and abet the principal actors engaging in criminal conduct. Like and subscribe is now a banned term. The Attorney General shall issue specific guidance that ensures domestic terrorism priorities include politically motivated terrorist attacks such as organized doxing campaigns, swatting, rioting, looting, trespass, assault, destruction of property, threats of violence, and civil disorder, the NSPM 7 says. And then we have more editorializing here, but I trust Ken. I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but the plain truth is that the NSPM-7 is a declaration of war on anyone who does not support the Trump administration and its agenda. Yes, it repeats the word violent over and over to purport only going after citizens who are moved to take up arms, but it also directs monitoring and intel coordination and collection to map and target the new evildoers, to borrow a Bush label he took from the Bible just days after 9/11. The partisan focus could not be more obvious. The real problem is this, quote, since Charlie Kirk was murdered, a friend of mine, assassinated, nothing's changed on their side, said White House counterterrorism czar Sebastian Gorka to Newsmax after NSPM-7 was signed. Not one leader, not one left-wing thought leader, member of Congress, senator, no one has said we distance ourselves from the violent rhetoric. The left refuses to rid themselves of the justification for violence, Gorka continued, and as such, President Trump is taking measures to protect us from the violent rhetoric that becomes snipers and bullets. Just blatant lies? Yep. So, it's not great. And obviously, I mean, this goes without saying, but these rules, these directions, these guidelines are so broad that they can be used as a justification to engage in basically any act of federal harassment or surveillance against any person deemed a threat to the administration. It's not good. Could they use this to arrest Mamdani? I mean, hypothetically, they can arrest anyone for any reason. You know, you don't even have to have a charge to arrest somebody. They can make up whatever they want. I don't think they would go after Mamdani necessarily, though. I think there'd be a little bit too much juice for that squeeze. Are you worried about getting arrested? Well, considering like the incredibly wide range and disingenuous application of these criteria, I fear, you know, pardon me for being skeptical here, that they might be more interested in targeting enemies of the administration than they are in actually combating violence. And so to that effect, yes, but we're all in it together. We love capitalism and saying the N-word here, officer. That's right. Did you see Fetterman blaming the left for political violence? I don't understand why. Yeah, okay, yes, Fetterman is a Republican. I don't understand why it keeps getting brought up to me. Mossad has a video of him a toddler. Allegedly. I'm told. There are rumors. Can this really be enforced effectively, though? Well, it depends on what you mean by enforcement. The Nazis, you know, legally, the Nazis, the rules they put forward, the Soviets did the same thing, were incredibly vague, right? The restrictions, limitation, the stuff you could get in trouble for, really broad, really sweeping. The point of doing this was that way that gave the administration the permission that they wanted to go after anyone they deemed inconvenient, you know? They didn't have to make like a specific legal case for every political opponent. They could just apply the rules in a discriminatory fashion. So are they going to arrest every single person who celebrated Luigi Mangione's alleged killing of Brian Thompson? No, that would be like 100 million people or something. That would be too many people for them to get. But they could use it to go after a couple of people, certainly. To what extent will the courts combat this? The courts can't do anything about it. It has nothing to do with the courts. Here's an example of what enforcement might look like. They did it to Muslims in our lifetime. Yes, they did this to Muslims after 9/11. The FBI was given counterterrorism directives in the exact same way, by the way. They were also given presidential national security presidential memorandums with the goal of entrapping and filling quotas on, you know, preventing future Islamic terror. So we had a lot of honeypotting after that. FBI honeypot ensnares Michigan man. After falling in love with an FBI informant, a 21-year-old Michigan man was accused by federal prosecutors of supporting the Islamic State. Yeah. Khalil Abu Rayyan was a lonely young man in Detroit, eager to find a wife. Who amongst us? Jana Bride claimed she was a 19-year-old Sunni Muslim whose husband was killed in an airstrike in Syria. The two struck up a romantic connection through online communications. Now Rayyan, a 21-year-old Michigan man, is accused by federal prosecutors of supporting the Islamic State. Documents released Tuesday show, however, Rayyan was motivated not by religious radicalism, but by the desire to impress Bride, who said she wanted to be a martyr. Jana Bride was an FBI informant hired to communicate with Rayyan, who first came to the FBI's attention when he retweeted a video from the Islamic State of people being thrown from buildings. He wrote later on Twitter, "Thanks, brother, that made my day." Rayyan, who had previously been arrested for having marijuana, is now charged with unlawful possession of a firearm and making a false statement to acquire a firearm. So this is the playbook. They use entrapment and increased surveillance to that first they identify you. Who amongst us, who out there has tweeted something glib about the administration? Who's liked and retweeted a post that says, I can't wait for it to happen, and it has 250,000 likes, and the post doesn't specify what they're referring to, but everyone knows what they're referring to. Exactly, right. They find people, and through honeypotting or increased surveillance or whatever else, it can be a number of things. It's pretty easy these days to reach people through social media. You're not exactly forming like letter correspondences. You're not mailing back and forth. They can join your fucking Discord server. They can be playing Lethal Company with you. And their goal is to either get you to commit or plan to commit a crime, or to get you to admit to having already committed crimes. Now, I know a lot of you are, and I'm just going to lay this on a little thick because it's true and you deserve to hear it, lonely do-nothings who would do anything to impress a baddie who showed up in your DMs. So you're all very susceptible to this technique. Again, who amongst us, right? But there are a million efforts they can make at this. And I want to remind you guys that for the most part, the clown behavior that we've seen from the administration has been from the Department of Homeland Security and the army of fat retards that they have raised to chase bicyclists throughout the street. But the online entrapment and investigation and everything that they would do to try to frame you for being a terrorist would be conducted by the FBI. And they are not, at least not all of them, fat retards. A lot of them probably work out. A lot of them are probably pretty smart. You got to be careful. You understand what I'm saying? I'm making a very direct plea here. I'm not doing this for content. I'm not doing this, it is literally for content. I'm being sincere right now, okay? We are living in a different administration, okay? This country is under siege. I have a friend of a friend who's told me something that I find kind of funny. And they grew up in Italy. Sorry, it's not the friend of a friend, a friend of a friend's dad. So the dad of the friend. I'm hearing this very indirectly. Maybe it's not even true, but I want to relay it because it's important, okay? And they're all the people in this chain are left-leaning, right? The dad grew up through the years of lead in Italy. I don't know exactly how old he is. I think he would have been born some like the 50s or something. But he grew up in a very tumultuous period in Italy. And to this day, he is extremely careful about what he says, even though his positions are really, really obvious, He acts a little bit like a YouTuber who has an obvious political bias, but doesn't want to lose the apolitical audience, so they don't say anything. But if you're even a little bit politically aware, you know exactly where they stand. Like, this guy, allegedly, like, on the phone, he won't say anything. Like, he'll call the American nephew, and be like, how are things going over there? Don't tell me about Trump. Don't tell me about Trump. I don't want to know, The implication being like, don't say anything dissenting over the phone. And I find that a little bit charming, and I'm very sorry to say, I think that we are actually in that era. I'm not exaggerating. I mean that. You should start to exercise the same level of care and discretion that communists in America did throughout the 1940s and 50s. You should express the same degree of care that people on the left would have had to express in Italy or in Greece, today in Turkey or in Russia. It's more severe over there, but we're on the downhill slope right now. Who knows how bad it gets? Does this mean no left posting? No, it means be careful. Listen, it is not against the law to go out there and say, can't wait for Trump to die. That's not against the law. No matter what these loser fucks, these anti-American pieces of shit say, that is not against the law. That is freedom of speech. And the executive branch cannot change the law. Are we sure? Yes. Listen to what I'm saying. That is freedom of speech. They cannot change that. They could arrest you and you would go to court and you would win if you were charged for having said that. That's exactly why, as we read in this article, this person retweeting and agreeing with a message from the Islamic State was not sufficient to charge him. It's not against the law to retweet terrorists. It's not against the law to agree with terrorists. It would be against the law to plan to commit acts of terrorism. But he was not charged with terrorism. He was charged with unlawful possession of a firearm. They got him on other things. He got Caponed? Not quite. Capone was actually committing crimes. They got him on tax evasion because that's what they could do. In this case, he was not committing the crime they wanted to charge him with. They wanted to go after him for stuff relating to terrorism. They couldn't. They were not able to. If everyone self-censors, is this how it ends? No, don't be stupid. I'm not talking about self-censoring and, like, not being left, okay? If you give up the fight on that, then you might as well deport yourself to Russia, okay? You might as well just live in shit forever, okay? What I'm saying is, be careful. The overzealousness of the executive branch does not immediately translate into an actual revocation of our constitutional rights. What it means is that they're doing everything they can to get around them. That's the point of doing this. Surveillance and honeypotting in order to get people charged with crimes because they haven't already committed any. The crime isn't the free speech. They know they won't hold up in court, and they can't go and arrest black bag every leftist in the country and send them all to Gitmo. There's not enough Gitmos. And it would be bad PR. This feels more like a toothless memo. No, it's not. Oh, you don't understand. It's not toothless. It's very, very dangerous. And I'm outlining for you exactly what this means. You have to listen. Don't downplay. I'm listening, or you need to listen. I'm explaining what this means. It's very, very, very serious. Just be careful. That's all I'm saying. If you're online, you're unable to understand what Vosh means when he says be careful, but I'm sorry, you're a lost cause. You guys need to demonstrate for once in your life a tiny fraction of the care and self-preservation instincts that your ideological ancestors would have had to engage in the 1960s, 1950s, and 1930s, okay? Like, in all around the world, in Russia, Hungary, Turkey, even to this day, in places like Italy, you know, people have to engage in a little more precaution, a little more precaution, a little more they need to be a little bit more aware. It doesn't mean there aren't leftists in Hungary. There are. Is this the end of LARPing? It might be a little bit. It just seems like they don't have the juice. It reeks of desperation. You're just incorrect. This is exactly what even like an extremely successful fascist regime would do. This is not a juiceless move. This is basically like the absolute limit of what they can do with the federal police. This is basically like the farthest. I actually don't think there's anything much more they can do that isn't just like breaking the law in increasingly overt ways. In terms of like their legal limits, this is essentially a presidential memorandum, a declaration to all federal law enforcement that the game's open on any kind of surveillance, any kind of entrapment, any kind of investigation for anyone who's an enemy of the administration. Anyone who is a political opponent of Trump. I don't know. It's pretty bad. Okay, true, we're all cooked. No, I didn't. You people are going to piss me the fuck off. I did not say you're all cooked. Scrub your online presence. I didn't say that either, though you might have, some of you might want to. Quit being dense, okay? You people oscillate between two extremes. Vosh, there have literally been cases where the Indian government under Modi have used bulldozers to tear down the homes of critics and dissenters and minorities. It's so surreal seeing so many people not understand what being careful means. Sorry, buddy, we got used to freedom over here in the US of A. Sorry, we invented freedom and we've grown accustomed to it. My apologies. They'll get used to it. Like, I don't know, you guys, like, before talking about this, we literally just saw, sorry, not this one. We literally just saw, like, 30 federal police chasing after a guy for saying fuck Trump. Like, this is the country we're in right now. You need to act like it. You need to learn. I know it's funny, but it's also 30 federal police getting ready to beat the shit out of a guy for saying fuck Trump. Which is, you know, free speech. Maybe go into details when what you mean when you say be more careful. I've been plenty specific. If you're really that dense, then be fodder in the jail, so there's less room for me, okay? So if you can't figure it out, you go there and 50 of you per cell. You fill it up, so when they come for me for saying like oops, they did an oopsie when someone takes another crack at Trump or whatever, they don't have room for my fat ass, and I get to like sit in a county cell or something, okay? Yeah, are you a fucking Fed? Can you give me more specific examples of what exactly would be illegal to say? Incitement to violence, threats and incitement to violence, or anything. They got that Muslim IS guy on gun charges, man. Don't be stupid and don't piss me off. I'm gonna fucking. Oh, like, sorry, I can't make threats anymore. Wait, you can legally make any threat against leftists. I'm learning this. I'm gonna come down on you guys if any of the Fed posting shit too. Okay, like we're living in a new era right now. I'm being serious. You think it's a joke? I'm being serious. Okay. All of us are on the hook. If you're not American, maybe you're not, though the quality of the world at large is going to decline. But it's not, it does not escape my notice that on the list of like public enemies of the administration, high profile, very left-leaning YouTubers and live streamers are not like the top, but they're not far from the top. Like they're reasonably close to the top. So don't make this difficult for me, all right? Do you have a plan to flee the US? Why do people keep asking me this? I feel like you're feds. You will know when I do anything, okay? Well, because it'll have already happened. That's when you'll find out. Why would I give you that? But I get asked this like every stream. Like, well, listen, if I ever have even an inkling of an interest in leaving this country, you will find out because the background will have changed. That'll be your tell. My recommendations for you guys notwithstanding. Posh has been streaming from an undisclosed Pyongyang location for over a year. That is true. I didn't even move when you guys saw the background change. I actually perfectly recreated the previous background in Pyongyang and then on a whim changed all of it behind me. It's because your viewers are also anxious about being persecuted for existing, which has nothing to do with my considerations, unless you're also a popular YouTuber. Again, the National Security Directive does not create new laws. It only provides greater incentive and motivation and permission to federal police to investigate, to try to catch you violating existing laws, which they were probably already doing. To an extent, yes. To an extent, yes. That is true. And I do think that one small saving grace, that is a lot of text. I do think that one small saving grace is that I do not think that many of the more competent and seasoned FBI officials are as aligned with the Trump administration as they might want them to be. There's a reason why the DHS is right now operating as the de facto like federal arm of like the brown shirt state. Hold on. Then why are you being so hyperbolic about it? One moment you say we're all fucked, the next you're like, nah, bro, it's fine. Genuinely, I think that you have emotional or cognitive issues that make it difficult for you to hold multiple truths in your head at once. I think you're having difficulty, I think that it's a coping mechanism. You live in America and you're very upset about what's happening, but you want to be given a very strong, emotion to cling on to. But the complexity of, this is bad, but in a very complicated way, that's too much for you. So instead, you want a yes or no. This is a very MAGA mindset of looking at the world. And I feel bad for you, and I want you to change. I'm also annoyed with you, and I'm going to ban you for 30 days for annoying me, which is my right. Legally, you don't have the right to not be banned. The federal police can't come after me for that. I just want to make sure any FBI agents watching this right now are aware of the fact that that's not in violation of any statute, state, or federal laws. I'm not, yeah, it's totally above board. That being said, what was I saying? The FBI is not as militantly right-wing as it was back in the 1960s. In the 1960s, under COINTELPRO, the FBI was effectively a partisan, anti-communist organization. They let a lot of shit slide that wasn't communism, and they went after communists like a motherfucker. Hoover was a lunatic. Now, the FBI today is probably filled largely with center-right to right-leaning types. I'm not saying they're like a left-leaning organization, but they're not the DHS. I would say that on average, the political alignment of the FBI is somewhere in the ballpark of like Liz Cheney, and the political alignment of the DHS is somewhere around Stephen Miller. That'd be my guess. That's just a ballpark, you know? So I think that we have to keep that in mind moving forward. Hopefully the FBI, who are by far the most um, sort of competent administrators of this directive, hoping that they're somewhat less motivated to, you know, participate in what would be the active destruction of free speech in this country. Okay, I think that I've given a pretty nuanced analysis here. You know, I don't think I've left that much on the table. That's the I'm sure they weren't ingratiated by having their top brass purged. Yeah. Didn't they purge a bunch of the competent ones? They purged the directors. They couldn't purge every like competent non-MAGA FBI agent, because that would be almost all of them, I think. And they would be like, keep in mind, okay, they fired a bunch of the top brass and tried to fire everyone who worked on the J6 investigation, but after internal pressure backed off it. So a bunch of the people working at the FBI to begin with are longtime professionals who aren't fond of the MAGA movement, and then when MAGA took power again, immediately they tried to fire them for literally just doing their job, investigating J6, and then backed off from internal pressure. So I don't think the FBI is ideologically MAGA in the way that the DHS is. So that's just a guess. Maybe that's also cope. A lot of Mormons in the FBI. I thought that was the CIA. I thought the CIA was the, well, maybe it's both of them. They're everywhere. They kind of are.